Welcome to the third episode of 4K for You. I'm Tom Connors, and with me is my co-host, Valliant Renegade. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, and we're back here on a Wednesday afternoon, live at 5 again, talking 4K.
Yes, we are indeed. How's your day been?
Been good, been busy, getting ready for a little annual compliance audit inspection we have every year. That's tomorrow morning, so today was kind of hectic, so it's good to be home, good to kind of unwind and have some fun.
Absolutely. We got some news to talk about, and we'll take your guys' questions, of course, as well as we talk some 4K this week on 4K for You. This is our third episode. Hit that like button. Please share out the link, all that good stuff. We'd appreciate that. Yeah, we already have some regulars here. Hamdinger is here, and I am here as well. That is correct. We have Mecha J, we got Morgan King, we got Parrot Head, we got Here in the Steadfast, we've got Far Outcast, Eagle Fang for Life is here as well, kids. Welcome, everybody. Did I say Parrot Head? Hopefully I didn't miss you. KB is here as well. Thank you for being here, guys. Accidental Tourist, welcome, welcome, welcome. As people are filing in, has there been any new movies that you've picked up this week or anything that you found anything interesting good?
Yeah, I mean nothing like new, but new to me that I've been enjoying since we last talked. So I did get Misery, and I did get Carlito's Way. I have been able to. Yeah, I remember you telling me, and I was able to watch Misery, and I really, really enjoyed that. Really pretty transfer. Carlito's Way, I have not had the opportunity to yet, but I finally, because we're coming up on Halloween, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I've been wanting to do this. I'm just going to go do it before I forget again. And I got a 4K copy of The Nun, and oh my god, I wish I had done that 2 years ago. I really enjoy that movie. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and it's not everybody's favorite James Wan movie, but I really loved it. And the 4K transfer on that is beautiful. The shadow detail, you got to watch it in 4K to really appreciate the a lot of the fear and suspense that's built in that, because there's so much going on in the shadows that the lesser quality versions of that film just tend to crush away.
Yeah, I've never really been into that franchise exactly, but I could imagine that, especially with a lot of lights and darks, even if it's a 2K interpositive, that upgrade is probably going to help.
Yeah. Yeah, and there wasn't a terrible amount of CGI in that movie. I mean, it was, mostly pretty in camera. I mean, there's a few sequences in there where they added some small effects and things like this, but they were few and far between. So most of it looks pretty amazing.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I got Demons 1 and 2, the limited edition 4K from I believe Blue Underground did that one.
Okay.
And Protege, the new movie this week with Samuel Jackson, Michael Keaton, Maggie Q, I think is her name.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It sounds interesting. They give away a lot of the plot on the back of the box, I'll tell you that much.
I'm pulling it up now. When did this?
It came out in theaters 2-3 months ago. Not even. I remember Mike Mexican Iron Man seeing it. He said it was pretty good.
Oh shoot! Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just pulled it up on Blu-ray.com. I'm looking at
the director of
Casino I completely
Royale.
Missed this. Oh yeah. Yeah, that looks like the kind of movie I would like. I might have to go check that out.
Walmart had that, so I seen that at Walmart today because I did run out to see, how things were looking. Because, frankly, I get it, guys. There's a lot of lately. It's been Synapse was it? Mike, I'm going to send you the link if you're not busy, Mike. You can.
Oh God, Robert Patrick was in it too.
Oh, and
Protege.
Yeah.
I saw a screenshot of him and I'm like, oh my God, it's Robert Patrick. Look, it's Terminator 2.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, now I really want to see it.
Yeah, it looked all right. Mikey said he liked it. So I figure I'd give it a shot. Like I said, I saw it at Walmart. I think you can get the 4K for about $25. It looked like.
That's what I'm looking at.
Not too bad. I think it was like 20 or 21 just for the.
They gave it a good score, 4.5. So I mean,
yeah, he said it was good. So
pretty healthy. I mean, in terms of the 4K transfer, the movie.
Oh yeah.
3.5, but still 3.5 on that site is still pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, Mike says he can't join this week, but definitely next week. All right. Well, we'll have you next week, Mike. We look forward to that. Mike here in the chat. He, of course, is one of the few people besides Robert Meyer Burnett who can give me a run for my money as far as my collection goes. But speaking of collections, we got some new movie news we're going to go through first. We got a few things we're going to discuss as far as what's going on out there. We're going to talk a little Halloween, take your guys' questions. First and foremost, some of you, speaking of going out and looking for movies, I'm sure some of you may have ventured out yesterday looking for the Scream 4K that was supposed to drop. And I knew already it was not coming. I had heard earlier this last week that it was going to get delayed. Now, I have not heard till when. I heard November 5th. But that is starting to sound like that may be a big maybe. Now, at this point, I'm just curious why they just didn't wait till the new movie comes out and release a the four discs, or at least the trilogy, because I don't know if they own part 4. No, that's one that's up in the air. Because part 4 was produced by the Weinstein Company, so I don't know if that was bought out with everything or not. But no, I don't know when it's coming, but we've been seeing a lot of these delays lately. Valiant going back to like Indiana Jones. We saw, well, this is funnily enough, these are all Paramount titles usually too. Star Trek. But those two actually still hit their street date, but they had a hard time getting them.
It was the supply. Yeah.
The
supply was a little slow to trickle out, but they at least had copies out there on time. Yeah. Not many.
In this case, not Scream. Scream at all, none. No. I ordered the Steelbook. I got the delay message for that the same day I heard it was going to get delayed. And so no surprise there. And so, yeah, I'm hoping it's just a week or two, which is what it looks like. If not, we'll see how it goes here. We'll find out, because here's the thing, kids. First of all, most of us know already, a lot of these are getting delayed because of the supply chain. And what I mean by the supply chain is, I mean, everything all the way from the disc manufacturing to the distribution side of things back to the studio, because here we have a problem where we only have one plant open in the US that actually manufactures discs. Every other thing is imported. And funnily enough, this year was one of the, actually, as far as I know, from what I was told, was the biggest year for Blu-rays. Like, they produced more Blu-rays through the studio system than any other year since the format has been introduced. But they're still running into a supply problem. And yet you go to a Walmart and a Best Buy and you would think that nobody's buying movies, right, Valiant?
I mean, they've basically shanked their entire movie sections.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much left. I mean, I remember I used to go into, especially like Walmart. I mean, I remember, and man, I'm going back at least 15 years ago when I lived closer to the Walmart in my area. I mean, I remember I used to go there, get bored late at night, man, go check out, see what's on the movie. I mean, you'd have 4, 5, 6 aisles of movies. You'd have DVDs, you'd have Blu-rays, and I mean, by that point, I don't think 4K was really out there yet. But I mean, you had a huge library out there.
Islands and stuff that had the cheapies.
Stacks, the bins of them. Same thing at Target, same thing at Best Buy. Hell, my Target's being totally rearranged right now, and one of the first things to go was the media section. You know, it's very small now. It's basically one aisle with maybe 4 shelves, and it's maybe not even 20%, maybe 15% of what they used to have. So people are ordering online, you know, or at least when they're getting this, they're ordering from online stores, excuse me, you know, or they're going into digital and streaming. It's just easier just to, you know, click on the link for Amazon and just, you know, say, hey, I'll order it here.
Yeah, and, but I've been having the trouble getting it through Amazon, and I think, you know, that comes on the supply reproduction side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all being imported now. Mexico produces most of our Blu-rays. I don't know if there's a Canadian plant or not.
I
think probably. So, I think one of my discs from the Halloween set said it was made in Canada.
Oh, okay. That'd be odd that they would have sent out one.
Well, they probably didn't have. That's the thing.
They probably had to send it out just to complete the
different places just to get it done. Yeah.
Okay, the first one was Mexico, the second one was made in Korea, the third in Canada, the fourth at Warner Brothers, and the fifth one was in Zimbabwe or something. Yeah, I can see that, because it's you just have to find the places that can crank them out.
Yeah, because they ran into that with Halloween 2.
Mhm.
Halloween 2 was running behind on the rest of them.
Yeah, it's harder. I mean, I can tell you, I know there are places who will do, for example, like if you go look online, and I had to look into this in the past year, to have copies of discs made. Basically, you send a company off a finished disc. All you need to them to do is copy it, and they will, print a label on it for you. They'll make the Blu-ray or the 4K case or the DVD case for you. They'll even put your artwork in it. But that is, you're handing them a finished product to just duplicate. They have tons of places that do that. But what you might want to talk about is the difference between the actual duplication and, like we were talking about before the show, is actual disc authoring, which is a very, I mean, you have to author a disc first before you can duplicate it, and it's the authoring process that is in short supply.
Yeah, we're also running into a problem on the other end of things,
Mm-hmm.
because sadly, like the reproduction side, there's only 2 authoring houses left in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not able to get the masters out in time either. In fact, I heard recently there was one big title. They wouldn't tell me which title,
Mm-hmm.
but one big studio title recently that was not delivered to the authoring house until 3 weeks before the disc was supposed to be released.
Oh God!
Now,
And do you want to explain to everybody what authoring is, just in
I
case?
was going to let you. Why don't you? You're a little bit more. Or do you
Well,
want me
okay. To put it simply, okay. When you author a disc, so you have let's say you have a finished movie at that point, right? You've already seen it in the theaters. The movie exists. There's no more editing or anything else you
You
have to
got the
do.
files.
Right. You got the file. You have the finished file. Whether it's a .mov or MPEG or H.264, whatever format, whatever.
Right, right.
That has to go onto a disk, and then the disk that you see, it's on a disk as an image. It's got a menu system. It's got different audio tracks, different languages, different subtitles, all that kind of stuff.
The special
So
features, all
the
that.
special features, yeah, putting all of that stuff together. So you have to the finished movie is there, but you then have another big process of taking that finished product and then putting it onto a disc and turning it into what you see when you pop that disc in at home. I've
Right.
done disc authoring, nowhere near to that level, but if I film a dance recital with 2 cameras and it's a 2-hour dance recital and I have 4 hours of footage between 2 cameras, I have to edit them, track A, track B, put them together so you can cut from one camera to the next. I finish everything and then, yay, I'm done. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. I have to actually take that finished file and now I have to put it on a Blu-ray disc, add chapters, add chapter markers, add all kind of stuff. And that is disc authoring. So that's what Tom is talking about is turning that movie that you saw in a theater to a movie suitable for home use with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, and one of the boys from Echo Base is in the chat right now. It's probably Nick, I bet. Says we just finished getting our documentary authored for Blu-ray. It's in production now. Glad to hear.
Awesome.
And yeah, it says I just learned all about this going through this process. Yeah, you got to set up all this stuff.
Oh,
In
yeah.
fact,
And it's a different process when you're doing
yep.
it on that scale versus
Yeah.
what these Hollywood, what these Hollywood studios are doing. It's a whole other level from what I had to do or what Nick and Coach are doing for their thing. And y'all make sure you check that out on Echo Base. For sure.
And let's be real, like these departments have already been stripped down to their bones, right?
Yeah.
Like part of the kernel for the show we're on right now came from a video or idea that we were going to talk about why movies are the way they are now as far as home video. It's like Blu-ray is such a more advanced technology than DVD ever was, but yeah, we're not using it nearly to its potential.
Mm-mm.
Same thing with 4K, and that's because you don't have the tech people on the inside innovating things, right? I mean, some people may be old enough to remember that when the Matrix first came out on disc, there was DVD players that couldn't play the son of a bitch because it was so advanced. Like the menu system and everything that was on it, most people had to wait for a fucking update on and go to the internet, download it.
And that was before you had a lot of DVD players that would connect to the internet.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
to get the,
you had to put it on a memory stick and do it yourself, or put it on a disc. Sometimes you're lucky enough to be able to do that, or you just had to plug it right into a phone line, which was generally the case. But so like that's one of the problems. So there's not those people there. Plus, that's why a lot of the movies we get now, where like Warner is notorious for this. You slap it in, you get 30 seconds of the movie's theme and a flat image of whatever the disc art is. Like they are so fucking lazy in that respect. But nowadays I almost can't blame them because they don't have time for anything else.
No, because they're doing everybody else's shit.
Yeah, especially that's the other problem is now Warner is only one of the only authoring facilities, so they're handling everybody's business. And it's one of those things. So the supply chain is getting squeezed all the way down the line. And it just doesn't make any sense to me because, we used to have guys like Robert Meyer Burnett who would produce these things and they would put all kinds of work into it. And I was also told that there was a group of people that were working on a disc. And I guess there was only like 2 people that were able to work on this major disc collection. And in the end, they ended up working 80 hours in over 2 weeks. And they still think that the disc is going to get delayed. Because of the manufacturing side of things now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, once
no matter how hard they try, it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I'm trying to be as patient as I can on my end as a customer, right? Like, I get it. The supply chain is fucked up right now, but I still want my discs. And that's going to kind of lead us into one of our next parts here. It was like I was worried if I was going to get Halloween by Halloween.
Well, I hear you got it.
Yes, we did. Yeah, last week I showed it on the thing there, but I got the 5-disc big old box set. I know you got the first film, you said?
Yeah, well, I don't. I should stipulate. I have the first film from the previous release in 18, which I know this one's different. It's a different.
Yes.
They went back and they did a little bit more this time than last time. I won't bore you with all the details on that, but. It's a little bit better.
We will bore you a little bit about
okay, well, go for it. Yeah, well, I figured I knew you wanted to.
Yeah. If you want to get into it right now, we can.
No, that's why I said I wanted you to talk about the
might as well. I was going to check in with the chat here a little bit, but I just want to say we do, yes, I do have an Atmos setup, Stan Lee. Now, up front, I will say this disc looks, in my opinion, leaps and bounds. The new Shout Factory scan looks leaps and bounds better than the 2018 scan from Lionsgate. Now they're both from the negative. But between just a couple years advancement in technology, I believe the better color timing by Dean Cundy came back and oversaw a new color timing for this movie. Between those two things and having, redoing the dynamic range and the advancements we've had in that in the last couple of years, it looks so much different to me. Really? And I flipped back and forth a couple times. I was playing one on my one player and the other on my Xbox. And to me, I was just like, wow, this is just crazy. And then I flip-flopped them just to make sure, just kind of see.
Yeah, I hadn't ordered them yet because it's like they're all back ordered, delayed, and I'm like, but like I have Halloween in 4K, just not this latest version. And I will say, like the I think it was 2018 they released that one. That one that I have, I really like, especially when I had the Blu-ray version, and then I got the 4K version. The 4K version definitely gave me, and again, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, definitely had a step up in the shadow detail, which again, any kind of horror movie like that, or like we were talking about, I just got the 4K of The Nun finally. Stupidly, I should have had that years ago. But the detail in the shadows in a movie like that are so important because that's where the director hides some of the scariest stuff. And if it gets crushed in a lower quality transfer, you lose some of the intended impacts of the film itself. And this is where so Yeah, this is a good example right now for everybody out there that, not all 4K discs are going to be equal. So even though my
Oh,
Halloween
absolutely not.
copy is good and I like it, Tom's telling me now he's done a side by side comparison, and the new one is apparently even better.
Again, the better goes by. Here's the thing: I've looked up screenshots, and going by the screenshots, the actual clarity and the depth as far as what they were able to capture, there isn't that much difference according to what you look at on these screenshots that I think Blu-ray.com or HD Digest or whoever did it.
It's hard to tell in screenshots too.
Yeah, exactly. But like me looking at it with my eyes on my 82-inch screen,
Mhm.
it you could tell a huge difference. And here's the other thing: is on the Lionsgate disc, it's a much darker color timing. Like
Mhm.
everything is muted, the
Mhm.
colors don't pop nearly as much.
Oh, they finally have it
Thing
back in stock. I'm going to order it
Oh, there
right
you
now.
go. Yeah, things do get lost in the blacks.
Oh, they're all
Specifically,
back in stock.
yeah, they should be by now. I'd say I got mine.
Oh, they
Specifically,
still want $37 for Halloween 3.
oh, that's a good one though.
I
But
know.
no, like
I'm
specifically
gonna
the
do it.
scene where Michael is walking swiftly across the street to get Jamie Lee, and she's banging on the door. Like
Mhm.
part of Michael's body is lost in the blacks in the crushing of
Mhm.
the Lionsgate, but you can see him clearly in the Shout Factory one.
Excellent point, and that is exactly what I'm talking about, folks out there with the shadow detail. That the better a transfer you get, 4K is just a good baseline, right? 4K affords a studio to get a much higher quality image to you. The question becomes, since we were talking about disc authoring and disc duplication and all the, the recolor grading process and high dynamic range, it's up to the studio to then take full advantage of what the medium can deliver. They don't always do that. So, key point.
Yeah, and so like the picture quality much better, and the Dolby Atmos um is the actually it's an upgrade of the True HD 7.1 mix that was on the Lionsgate. So it's fairly similar. Like you can hardly tell a difference between the two. Because what my system will do is if it's something that's in True HD or 5.1, it's not Atmos, it'll just up convert it to an Atmos signal, and it'll
Hmm.
just fire off the upper range just whenever, something is kind of a faux like surround sound thing. And it
Hmm.
normally picks up on a lot of the same sounds. So really, I noticed very little difference between the two, but I did enjoy it. It's a nice, impactful soundtrack. I mean, the movie's not the first film specifically is not like a sound heavy film, right?
Right.
Outside of the music, which is the most, penetrating thing, pun intended.
Carpenter's famous score.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for the film. I mean, outside of that, you have like leave noises, wind noises, rain noises, and a few scenes.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's all interiors
Hmm.
and you're not hearing any real ambient noises. So
Hmm.
outside of voices, which are clear and fine,
Hmm.
it works just fine for what it is. So in the
Oh, sure.
first film specifically, I will say that the Atmos mix didn't really add or subtract or do anything to it one way or the other. And they have the closest they've ever gotten to the original mono mix on this version as well. So for those who are purists, this is the
Hmm.
closest you're ever going to get to that original mono mix because I guess that's been destroyed over the years. So on that note, though, Stan Lee's just firing in really good questions here, though, because you had the next one here that was really good. Let me grab it here. Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
Yeah, I
Um,
just ordered them all. The first two will be here Friday, and then Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which, like you, I was a big fan of because it was the first one I ever saw as a kid.
right.
That's gonna be here Monday. So,
Yeah. And I'll get into the rest of my review of the movies as we get going here, but I want to talk to you a little bit more about the first one as well. But
mhm.
Stan Lee does ask, and this has to do with specifically more with the first film. Movies get color timing changed for nearly every new release. So who knows which is correct? Stanley, that's a very important question. And that is where a lot of these movies run into issues nowadays because that is the case is you get somebody who's not even smart enough to go back to an old laser disc
Mhm.
or even try to contact or look into old notes. They'll just take some artistic license and they will fuck up a movie. Go ahead. You got something to say, Valiant?
No, I was just agreeing with you. I mean, what you said is right. It depends on. So it's kind of the same process when they film a movie and they go to post production. One of the first things they're doing, and it's usually done concurrently while they're editing a film, is you have a colorist that is working on the original raw files, sitting there deciding, first of all, I have to color correct this footage from the, log format or the raw format. They got it off the camera, and I have to color correct it. And then I'm going to add a color grade, or, like Tom is talking about, color timing is they're synonymous basically.
Yeah. It's several processes, but they're all done usually by the same department.
Yeah. So you give it a look. So the one I always like to use as an example, because everybody knows it, The Matrix. So we just talked about that. So it had that green tint. You knew, and this was the colorist. This was a decision, first of all, by the director, the Wachowski brothers, and they told the colorist, look, we want The Matrix to look green. We want this green effect. So the colorist's job is to go in there and give it that look. Then when it goes to home video later on, a lot of times, usually when it comes right out after the movie, 6-7 months later, it looks kind of the same. Now, The Matrix has changed over the years, and they finally got the color grading right on the 4K disc, because the Blu-ray was overly green.
Yeah, that's what you were saying last week.
Yeah, but with this point is that when you have these older films, and we're talking about 1977 with Halloween,
78, but
78, yeah. So shot in 77, released in 78, whatever it was. But with a movie like that, what Tom is saying is right. I mean, if you have a colorist that is basically, now that colorist is responsible for restoring the film, or possibly, I don't know if the authoring studios do any of that kind of work.
Not
Sometimes,
really. I think they generally extend it off to, because in this case, they actually, they had a specialist working with Dean Cundy, I'm assuming, who is the original cinematographer.
Right. And that's why this is the one that if a guy like Cundy was involved, then this is the disc that you can say, okay, this is the authentic look, because the cinematographer, or the DP, director of photography, the guy that shot it, the guy that would have made one of the ultimate decisions on how he wanted it to look, is involved in the restoration process of this version, then that would be technically the correct version.
Yeah. And basically, because we ran into this a couple weeks ago with the Star Trek mastering, people like Robert Meyer Burnett, who have seen the movie more times than they probably can count, knows what that movie's supposed to look like. And that's another thing, Stan, is you can go to somebody who is more than familiar with the subject matter, so they can go, yeah, that looks right, that doesn't look right. Just from their memory, sometimes you can kind of just get a good idea, because he said flat out, like, the movie has a blue wash, and it does, through the entire film, except for the scenes on Vulcan, which are a red wash. And what that means is they just basically put a blue hue over everything, and that pulls out all the greens and the reds and certain other colors. So you lose some range of the color, and that's kind of the whole point of 4K, is to bring that color back that you're losing in the degradation of the levels, because every time you go down a level, you're losing so much information. And that's where this stuff is very important, because you can regain some of that information through this process, which is generally mucking a picture up, because you have so many levels of crap you have to go through,
provided you don't have a colorist who is trying to put in their own look.
And so what Cundy did here, and this is where, I see you have some more questions about this. And again, generally it's the color timist or the director that dictates these things. And yes, back when movies were on film, it was a little bit quite a different process in doing this compared to now, because now it's all done digitally. So it's so easy to do. And it's easy to just take some artistic license and crap like that. So in this case, what we were lucky is Dean Cundy was able to come in, and he said, yeah, what we did is we did this much percent in this and this percent in that to create a sepia tone color for these scenes and stuff like that. Because that was the point, is the movie was shot in California. So to make it look more like fall, he gave it a sepia tone level over it. And it brought out the oranges and the browns instead of it being so green. And now the version that the older one from Lionsgate that you have, Valliant, that one doesn't have the gold wash to it. And so none of that's there. Like, a specific scene that stuck out to me was the car scene, where the scene where Loomis finds the truck. The truck in the version you have is like a dingy maroon color. In the Shout Factory one, it is a bright, like, apple red.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, see, and that's what that sepia tone did, is it just drew that red right out of that color. So it, like, total, like, world of difference.
Yeah.
And the skin tones are more accurate that way too. So like, and that's the thing, is Dean probably shot it in a way that he knew he was going to do this, so he compensated it with other things on his end to make sure that the skin tones and things would come out correctly. And these things are also important to know, is how was it shot? And when it was shot, what was meant to be done after it? And this is where research comes in handy if you don't have access to the original cinematographer or color timist. Like, then you can go back and look and see, this is what they did. This is how it was shot because they wanted to do this to it, and so on, because they didn't even have digital color timing until the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, the first movie I remember using heavy duty color timing was Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That one had it throughout the entire film. Like, otherwise I just know of just movies with certain shots and scenes that used it just to kind of make things match up and shit like that. Before that, like, that was the first movie I remember them using it from beginning to end to make the movie kind of have that same sepia tone look to it. Like, kind of like what Dean was trying to pull out here, even though it was more so with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But that was a choice made by the directors because they wanted it to look that way. And again, same thing with The Matrix. And when you don't know how you're taking it, see, the thing is, it's changed since The Matrix, and that was what my original point was. So nowadays, a director puts together a movie, the version that we see in theaters is damn near the same version we get at home. There's very few tweaks now involved, and that's because the home theater has transformed itself to conform to more of what the movie standard was, as opposed to the other way around, to where when movies on film and it was all, analog, there's a world of difference there. Like, a sound mix had to be completely different because the way a sound mix was done on those tracks was done for theaters the way they were set up back then, where they had the speakers behind the screen.
Right.
So like, the sound mix was done completely different than when they would do it when they would bring it home for a 2.0 channel mix for the VHS back in the day, or even for the 5.1 mixes back in the day. It wasn't just a ported over mix. You had to completely remix that shit because
that's what the THX standard did.
Exactly.
Because you had to over tweak the high frequencies for the theatrical release. It used to be the standard back then. And I remember, quick story on that. I was actually, where I used to work, we were sent a parcel of tickets to the opening night of Phantom Menace by Lucasfilm, because they wanted us to go to several of their THX theaters in the area and basically report back because of that. And that's what THX did. In the movie theater, it had one system, and then when it got to the home stuff, and we sold the home audio stuff that was THX certified, the Lucasfilm certified stuff. And the reason was because in a theater, they would boost those high frequencies, usually around 6 to 7 dB or decibels, so they could punch through the perforated screen. So like, if you go up to a movie theater screen real close, if you're at AMC or Regal, when it's over or something like that, and the lights come up in the house or way before it starts, go look at the screen. You get right up on it. If you can't get close enough, you'll see there's a bajillion little, millions of tiny little perforations in that screen, little holes. And that's for the speakers behind it. Those high frequencies have to punch through. They have to be attenuated up to make it through. So if you port that over just to the home disc, if you listen to it on your home speakers, it's going to sound like shards of glass coming at you.
Yeah, there's going to be no bass in it.
Right.
Hardly any tone, middle tone. Yeah. And the same thing is also, I think the rears are mixed higher.
They are
in the theatrical mix, so they can, as for the same reason, because you have people that are in the middle and the front who have to be able to hear it.
Right. And the speakers in the back are they don't have to punch through a screen.
No, but it's just they're different delay and different.
That's my point, is they have to be done differently because everything in the home is right there in front of you, so there's all those little tips and tricks.
And if one little fucking thing can fuck up a good release.
Oh yeah. And one thing you were talking about earlier, just real quick, and it kind of brings me back, because I actually still have some of these filters. Back when they were shooting film, when it came to color grading, the latitude in post-production back then, when it came to adding a grade to remember, we're talking about a physical film stock, is nowhere near what it is today. It's nowhere near what
you're talking actual physical. In some cases, like, as far as I know, you would actually send it to the house and they would take the film and they would literally run it through dyes.
Yes. In some cases, they would dye it, or they would do what's called push or pull processing, where they would expose it more. So like, if they said, hey, you need to take this stock of film and it needs to be dipped in this chemical for 5 minutes, and they wanted a different look, they wanted a higher more gritty look to it or something like that. They might dip it in there for 6 minutes
Right.
to overexpose it. But one of the things I was going to say was what they really did, what Cundy, I'm sure did, and I'm sure Cundy probably still has his original notes from 40 years ago. Of every lens he used for every shot, and most importantly, to get the look he wanted, because he had, like Tom was saying, he had to change California summer to Illinois autumn. So the easiest way to do that, and the way, because still photographers used to do it, my dad used to do it this way, and I still have some of these filters. You would have color filters that you would screw on to the front of the lens. Or in the case of the Hollywood cameras, it was a square filter you'd slide in on a mount, like, yeah, in a matte box. But like commonly back then, if they wanted a really warm tone, they had quote unquote warming filters. And when you drop that filter on the front of the camera, it looks orange. So you would pick your film stock, like a Kodak Portra 160, or, oh, I want more punchy colors instead of neutral colors. I'll use a Fuji film stock like this. But you would pick the film stock that would give you the base look that you were going for, and then you would stick a filter on front of the camera to change the color palette coming in entirely, so that you wouldn't have to do as much finagling in post. Because if you knew, it's like, I got to make this look like autumn, so I just need to push this to the orange just a hair, there's a filter for that. And you'd have to do all that in camera.
Yeah, and in this case, they didn't have that stuff. I don't think so. That's where the color timing came in more importantly in the first film. But it looks beautiful, looks gorgeous, especially considering the age of the film, the amount of money that was spent on it. It looks beautiful, sounds beautiful. Can't imagine Halloween looking any better than this, kids. This is probably the best it's ever going to get. Part 2, probably the best of the bunch, look-wise. This one was actually done, the scan was done by Universal. And it looks brilliant, looks great, but this one was shot on really good film stock. It was in the early 80s, so they were getting to that point where it's shot in scope, so it looks nice. Of course, there's some spots that are soft because of the focus and the lens. As with a spherical lens, you'll get that in certain spots, but no, the colors pop, the nights look nice and dark, and
they probably had a little bit bigger budget by then too.
Yeah, and I think
the success of the first
movie. Oh
movie.
yes, the second film had a much bigger budget, and I believe this one was also overseen by Dean Cundy, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the disc in front of me right now, but yeah, and the same thing with the third film. Now the problem with the third film looks good, but it suffers from the same problem that a lot of films do from that specific era, in that 82 to 86 range, where they use some shitty film stock that just doesn't maintain well. And you get a lot of really grainy blacks, and there's a lot of inherent film problems that they did the best they could. I believe both Halloween and Halloween 2, and maybe even, I don't know about Halloween 3, but I think the first two were shot in scope, not Super 35, if I'm not mistaken. They may have been Super 35 for the first one, but I think the second one was shot in scope.
I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, I'd have to actually go look, but I know that was one big deal for John Carpenter, is a lot of the money was spent on being able to shoot the film in 2.35, because he's like, if I can shoot this in 2.35, nobody will know that it didn't cost anything to make. They'll think it looks like a major movie. So I don't know on that one, but you could be right. He could have just took a 35 and cropped it down. That's very plausible. But I thought he shot in scope. Either way, point being, 3 looks good, but not as good as 2 because of the film problem. It has nothing to do with the process. It's everything to do with the film. All kinds of movies from that era look like that. It's just inherently the problem with the films that stock they were using at the time. The same shit that Gremlins, Beverly Hills Cop, quite a few other movies from that same era suffer from. Star Trek 3 had the same issues. That's why Star Trek 1 and 2 look so much better than 3 and 4, because 3 and 4 were shot in that era with that bad film stock. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Star Trek as well, because I think you watched those, right?
Yeah, I haven't gotten through all of them, but I know, we were talking about what to go into this week, and but that's one of the ones I've really liked. Wrath of Khan was beautiful, and I did start watching Search for Spock, and like you said, it looks great. It looks better than it's ever looked to me, and I have the Laserdisc copies, I had the Blu-ray copies, but definitely you could tell the quality of the film had either was not as good, or it it was suffering from, you know, a
There
bad
was some
stock that didn't trade in.
Eastman, yeah, there was some run of Eastman film or something like that at that time. I can't remember which company it was. It was either Eastman or Kodak. Whatever it was they were using, it was some cheaper version of it. And
Mhm.
it doesn't maintain well over time. And the other problem is everything they would strike from it, it would get worse and worse and worse and worse than what we were used to because of the grain value of the picture was horrible.
Mhm.
And again, it had nothing to do with anything other than that's just what the studios were using at the time. And there's nothing we can do to make it any better than it looks. So unfortunately, 3 suffers just from that problem. 4 looked great. I didn't get a chance to watch 5, but I'm assuming 4 looked just as great as, or 5 will look just as great as 4 because they were shot nearly back to back. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, in that respect, I'm assuming they looked just fine. Sound wise, Halloween 2 did sound so much better in the Dolby Atmos. That one I think did get a major upgrade because they had more to work with there. Because that's another problem with the first Halloween film. Again, I said, the sound stems they had are in rough shape, from what I've
Mhm.
heard, or even lost completely. They just recently released the original soundtrack for the first time, and I think that was even unusable for some of the newer shit because even that's in rough shape. Uh, and that was pulled directly from the original stems, so you can still faintly hear sound effects and shit in the background on the album. It's really strange, but yeah. And here's the other thing: is people have been bringing up that TMNT was supposedly remastered in 4K, and I'd not heard about this, but I did see that they had a Fathom event, and usually when they do these Fathom events, they get an upgrade, they get a 4K master. Because if you notice, a lot of the Fathom events we've had in the last 2 years are the Blu-rays we're getting now on 4K, or we have over the last 2 years or so.
I would
So
love to see it.
I
I
would
would
love to too, because
buy
that's
it
another one that
immediately.
looks like crap in the standard Blu-ray it has now.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
they did nothing to that. I swear they went back to the VHS copy and just went here.
oh, it looks horrible. It looks
Maybe at
horrible.
least I'll give them the DVD
2
copy.
doesn't even look that much better, really. 3 is the only one of the Blu-rays that is actually passable, but that was shot in 93, and
I was gonna say that was shot
yeah,
years later. That had after the success of
yeah,
the first 2, it was totally different process, different film, different everything.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as far as the Halloween set goes, I can recommend getting the movies as they are. Can I recommend the big box set, which you can't get anymore and probably cost you a fortune online? No. I'm not a big fan of the new art, so I'm not even going to probably put the posters up. The only poster art I liked was for 3. Um, Otherwise, I went and flipped around the original art right away. That was the first thing I did. And then other than that, the pins were nice. The records are decent, but here's the thing with the records: I didn't know until I got them. They're actually new versions of select tracks from the first 3 films by John Carpenter and his son and godson. So they're not the original versions. So that's kind of cool. That was kind of a neat surprise. So if anybody's heard any of his newer renditions, because he just did, and I think these were probably done in the same session that he did his last 2 albums, where he's done like new versions of his classic themes.
Mhm.
So you basically get 6 new versions of classic themes from Halloween 1, 2, and 3. And they're pretty
Cool.
cool. Yeah. So the only thing my complaint is they put them on those little 45s on that splatter fucking stuff. And you can actually hear the splatter in the record when it's playing. Like, like it'll go over when there's a little piece of the orange shit in the record. Yeah, so that's why I hate splatter styles. I hate colored records. They're usually on a crappier stock, or they're not the same as
Yeah.
regular. I just give me a regular vinyl. I don't
Yeah.
need it to be a fancy fucking color.
No, I know. I know.
Yeah,
Vinyl's
it's
meant to
cool
be.
to look at, but
Well, since vinyl has started making a comeback to broader audiences, that's what they're doing. They're making it look snazzy, and
yeah,
it's retro. And I mean, I remember back, and I was a teenager working in a high end stereo store into high school and then into college, and we were vinyl people, and it's like, and everybody thought we were crazy, records, and then like 15 years later, everybody's like, oh yeah, I got a turntable now, and I got records, and I'm like, yeah, all right.
I still have a bunch of records, and I do
I
have
do
2
too.
turntables, but I'm very selective on what new stuff I buy because they don't even tell you what's. Here's my biggest gripe with new shit. they don't tell you what is mastered from an analog master or a digital master. 9.999 times out of 10, I can guarantee you
It's
any new
coming off
record
a
out there is
CD.
coming off a digital master.
Yep.
Exactly. So like my point is, you might as well just buy the CD. It's not going to sound you want the is that what you really want? I mean, that to me, and honestly, there's only certain record albums I like because certain people's voices don't sound good on record. I don't know if it's just me that I noticed that, but like certain mid-range sounds just on record albums, I don't know what word
Depends
I'm
on your
looking for.
turntable, what you're listening. The phono preamp has the most to do with it, in my
Right.
opinion. I mean,
But at
so
the
I mean,
same time, I've never had the proper experience with any record player I've ever had ever since I can remember as a kid. Just when I first heard, DVD or CD for the first time, it was just like, I'm not going back to anything
well, I
else.
mean, but that was, and it's kind of like the the Blu-ray and the 4K stuff. There's a point where there's an issue of convenience. So yeah, even back then, I mean, when I'm talking about we all had vinyl. Now, what I'm about to tell you, I did not have this level of turntable, but one of my friends who worked in the store with me did, and I knew others that had turntables that were maybe half, a third, a quarter the price. But I'm talking about a $10,000 turntable with a $5,000 cartridge on the end of it, a Koetsu Rosewood cartridge with the stylus, the diamond stylus. I mean, we're talking about stereo systems that were 40, 50, 60 grand. And I mean, you could put a high-end CD player with it, and you put a high-end turntable with it. And again, we're talking about older recordings. Like we're talking about, mostly with 4K, where the big upgrade is in the, the older film stock that gets converted. Kind of same thing with vinyl. The newer stuff that's recorded digitally that then gets just transferred onto a record like Tom is talking about, it's not the same thing. But if you were to go back and listen to something that was originally mastered on an analog
basically
tape,
anything pre-1990.
right? Yeah, something that was mastered on an analog tape and then pressed on vinyl, that's a whole different story. So if you're into, like the stuff I love, like the 80s music, but especially going back into classic rock into the time of like Johnny Winter, Edgar Winter, even some of the older Stevie Ray Vaughan stuff, even, well before that, Allman Brothers, stuff like that. That's the Jimi Hendrix, all that kind of stuff that was mastered and recorded in analog. You play the original stuff or some of the remastered vinyl that were made by like Mobile Fidelity and stuff like that, like the real high-end labs that went back to the original master recordings and then remastered it, re-updated it 20, 30 years later. And some of them are still putting these pieces of vinyl out now. Those sound amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And then like that's a great example because when I was at Walmart today, doing my weekly run to just see what's out and get stuff for the animals and all that stuff. I grabbed Let It Be on vinyl. I have the new $100 set with the 5.1 Dolby Atmos remix of the album and all the CDs and outtakes. But I'm still like, okay, I'm looking at it, I'm like, if this was an actual analog master, I'd actually buy this. But I know it's not, right?
Yeah, it's a digital master. Probably.
It's a digital master. So like I might as well just listen to my CD. So like in that sense, and I get it. Some people they like to have it. But that's one of those cases where unless I'm buying a vintage record album, I'm definitely going for the CD first. And even in a lot of those cases, I still have multiple CD versions or what have you. So
yeah.
Daniel Davis, thank you so very much for the $10.
Yes,
says, have you seen the blue hue that was the Lord of the Rings extended Blu-rays? Even the DVDs look better color-wise. Disappointing, though it does seem to make the dark cave scenes look nicer. Now, it's interesting you brought this up because I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Lord of the Rings Blu-rays. Did you not?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on it, just as one of the many subjects we can talk about, and maybe we can do, if people are interested, maybe we can kind of dedicate a whole show to it at some point down the road.
We could, but I do actually have some visual aids as to what Daniel is talking about here.
Well, go ahead and pull them up.
I do indeed. Okay, so this is the new 4K color timing. And here's the thing you guys need to understand, and this is what I found out my research. And this is a kind of choose and pick your own monster on this point of view, but the other point of view is a little harder to argue. Peter Jackson messed with the color timing in these movies on purpose. He did do a little bit of George Lucas. He wanted to fix a few things that bothered him in the past. Do I agree with them? Meh. Are they as revolting as the special editions? Oh, hell no. But again, it's kind of a pick your poison, because here's what it looks like now. Here's what it originally looked like. So yeah, world of difference.
Yeah.
Big world of difference. But I guess here's the thing is Jackson originally wanted this to look more dreamlike. So that's why it's got the halo.
Yeah.
And the vignetting. Yep. Thank you. And it's more of a gray tone than the blue. And then the other problem though we have here is, whoops, wrong way, is this. There was some DNR run on the movie. And it fucking deleted some shit that it's not supposed to. This is what we talk about when you run these things as just a program and you don't have somebody go in and double check shit. Right? Because as we see in the original version, you see Gandalf's staff here, barely there, but it's there. But it's very similar to the white background, the top. Now we go to the 4K, it is gone. Why is it gone? Because DNR came in and erased it. And nobody paid attention.
Yeah, and just for everybody out there, a lot when DNR, or digital noise reduction, is applied, a lot of the software and the programs that do this, it's very similar to the ones that I use in photography, like in Lightroom or Photoshop, or really Adobe Premiere is the video editing software. But you basically plug in a number, and I mean you can adjust DNR, if you in a more sophisticated program, you can adjust it from scene to scene. But sometimes what will happen is they'll put in, if you have a scale of 0 to 100, and there's two different kinds. There's digital noise reduction for color, and there's digital noise reduction for luminance or brightness. Now, the color DNR reduction is usually pretty non-destructive. I've maxed out that sometimes when I felt like there was a lot of like some of the, grain in the dark areas.
Scenes,
yeah. And you really saw like all the blue and the red speckles. You can crush that out with color DNR and not wreck the details. However, the more you crank up the DNR on the luminance side of the picture, the brightness side, the more you run into what Tom has on screen here, which is where it actually starts crushing detail. And this is one of those things to where they probably looked at the first couple of scenes and they slid that DNR thing up to where it was like, okay, this looks good. Nothing's being crushed. You usually try to use just a little bit of DNR before you hit the point of crushing detail, right? That's your breaking point. You're going too far. I've lost detail. So what happened is who knows? They didn't look at the whole thing. It's just like you said. They probably set it based on an early scene and then really did not look carefully enough at scene by scene to go, oh, shit. Too much.
Yeah, and ones that have suffered the most from this have been Disney movies. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but there's been situations where lines have been removed and nobody noticed and paid attention until it was way too late. Like, yeah, and it's all because of noise reduction, not figuring out what something is. Or when you run to get rid of, like, I'm sure the line thing has more to do with trying to get rid of scratches. And what it'll do is it'll think a line is a scratch. And if somebody who's overseeing that isn't paying attention, and I don't even know why you would run a bunch noise reduction on an animated film anyway. I don't see why you need it, but they did on a bunch of Disney movies, and they deleted lines and shit on accident, which is strange.
It's I mean, especially, I mean, the older ones I can understand where they have a really old film stock of Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, something like that, and they're going to try to salvage what they can from whatever the best and most original version of the negative or the interpositive that they may still have that's salvageable. But like you said, because I mean they have to get rid of things in there, not only lines, but they mostly have to go. And you got to remember in the old days with film, when you had to splice films together, or you had, you're splicing pieces of film together to actually do the editing. The editing was a physical process of cutting and gluing film together to get the scenes that you wanted to get. And then when it goes to a theater, they were usually on 2 separate reels, and you'd have what they called cigarette burns, the little circles that would pop up in the film to let the projectionist know it was time to switch over to reel 2 in the projection booth. So they have to get rid of all that crap on some of these older film stocks.
Yeah,
And they,
especially if you don't have the negative.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you some of them, I'm wondering. I swear to God, they are actually using like an old theatrical copy on some of these.
Well, sometimes you
things.
have to just to fill out. Like a
Because
great
that's what you
example
have. Yeah.
I just said was like Dracula. They don't
Yeah.
have the negative anymore.
No.
The version that's out on disc now is from an inner positive. And same thing with they did have most of the negative, I guess, for the Spanish version, but they didn't have it for the third reel. So they actually used a piece of a release print from Spain, I guess it was, or something like that. I'm assuming
Crazy.
Spain, probably considering it was a Spanish version, to fill in for the third reel. So yeah, like you'll run into these things. In fact, there's even recent movies, and I mean, there's been issues with certain things, and some that aren't so recent, but recent enough where you'd be like, "What the fuck?" Like they lost the negative to at least 2 movies that I can think of so far. Ben, which was the sequel to Willard, the rat movie.
Mm-hmm.
They can't find the negative for that, and they cannot find the negative for Beastmaster.
Oh,
or it's been destroyed. Yeah, because the
God,
4K.
I have not heard that name.
Yeah, the
in a
4K disc
long
that's
time.
out there right now is actually from an inner positive. The best they could find. It does look good, but like, yeah, you'll have that. And hail, Culture Casino. I suppose I could send you a link if you want to hop in here, Culture. We're going to be just probably answering mostly questions from here on out. But
Yeah.
Snowy Taco says, "Hey guys, you both helped me out last week. Well, glad to hear it on what to 4K TV to get. I got what I wanted for a great deal. Thanks for all the insights. Stay awesome." Well, we're glad to hear it.
Awesome.
That's what we're
Oh,
hoping.
you know what, Tom? That reminds me. I don't
Yeah.
think you ever sent me Jesse's email.
I didn't? Shoot.
No, I didn't get it. If
Oh,
you did, I didn't get it. I'll put it that way.
I'll resend it to you then.
Yeah, just as soon as you said that, they're like, "Oh yeah, you helped me buy a
yeah.
TV." I was like, "Shoot, I hadn't talked to Jesse yet. I didn't. Yeah,
I totally spaced it out too. Then otherwise, I
if
thought I
if
sent
you
it to
did,
you,
I either missed it or it never made it.
Yeah, I'll get it to you here.
No big deal. I was just thinking about it.
I might even just forward you his email or whatever. But yeah, let's see what else you guys are talking about. But I'm pretty sure Lord of the Rings was filmed and the trilogy was done. Yes, this is true. The Hobbit trilogy was shot on the 5K Red, and I think there was one of the other ones they used.
It was either a Red or an Ari, or
I think the Ari they used as well. Yeah, and then
Ari's what everybody uses,
and I'm pretty sure those were finished in 4K. Now, the original trilogy, what they did was they scanned the film, the negative. But as far as the scenes with CGI, they upconverted to varying degrees. I have not sat through the entire trilogy yet in 4K. I watched a little bit of the first one just to see how it looked.
I've really sat and watched about 80% of it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
what do you think?
I think the new 4K version, I think it's beautiful. I mean, I know there were some choices with color grading that changed. And yes, I'm not going to say that they killed it with DNR. It's far from that. I have seen movies that have been wrecked with DNR. Well, we talked about one the other week with Terminator 2. That was a total shit show. This movie altogether, though, there was definitely a benefit from the 4K scan, the detail that came through, especially on some of the costumes, some of the makeup, the creatures. Was definitely a big uptick in detail for me. And I'm a big lover of these movies. And I always have been. Saw all of them in the theaters multiple times. I bought the Blu-ray, I bought the DVD box set, then I bought the DVD extended editions, then I got the Blu-ray box set, the Blu-ray extended editions, and then I bought the 4K extended editions. So big fan. The big thing with these movies, like we've been talking about, and I keep going back to this, I know, but it's also the uptick in the I'll call it the salvation of shadow detail because of the HDR10 process, the high dynamic range process. So just like we're talking about with any horror movie, The Fog or The Nun or Halloween, you have a lot of stuff going on in shadows. In Lord of the Rings, especially once you get to Two Towers and places like that, it gets visually darker. And there's a lot more shadow detail going on in there that Peter Jackson has shot, and the 4K Blu-rays really pull a lot of that shadow detail out, especially when you get into Mordor and Return of the King and stuff like that. It's I really like it, and I can deal with things like, PJ decided to change the color timing of a few sequences. Overall, again, to 99% plus of the people out there, they're probably really not going to notice a difference in terms of the color grade, unless you really know the movies intimately well, visually well. But I think everybody will notice. I mean, if you really want to go side by side, and I did it, going from the Blu-ray to the 4K, and I think there's even scenes in there. There are lines and scenes in there in this extended edition on 4K that were not even in the Blu-rays. I swear. Because there are things, and I've watched these movies a multitude of times, and I remember putting on the 4K disc when as soon as I got it and I started watching, from Fellowship straight through, and I'm like, I don't remember that line. I don't remember that camera shot. I don't remember that 5 seconds of that same scene. I mean, it's little things. It's not like there's
I know the extended edition's better, so when I do watch it, I'll let you know. Like,
yeah,
because
there were too many things that were jumping out at me where I was sitting there going like, I don't remember that.
let's put it this way: I've seen the original versions maybe twice to 3 times each,
Yeah,
but I've seen the extended cuts the most, probably about
that's me.
5 times each.
I've probably seen dozens.
So if I
Yeah.
feel the same way, I'll let you know. But Mike says he's happy with the transfer, so that's a good
Yeah.
he knows his 4K, and we're gonna have him on next week. So if he says it's good, I trust his judgment on that. But Ryan asked a very important question because I noticed this. I had a problem last 2 weeks here. Sony did some fucking update. I'm sorry you went and bought an LG player that died, or okay, so you did. Okay, I read that wrong. Okay, bought one to replace my LG. Please. Okay, here's what you got to do. I don't know what the fuck their update did, but for some reason, if you're having the same problem I am now, is that there was an update or something that makes whenever something is in Dolby Vision, it won't play through. It's just black screen.
Oh,
If that's
God.
the problem you're having, then all you got to do is reset all your settings. Then go back
Like
in and
factory
turn.
reset.
Yep, factory reset and turn off all your internet shit. Do not do any updates. That's what I have had to do at least twice now. I figured that out.
Is that on the 700?
Yes, and if you
That's the
just
one I
bought
have,
it,
and
if it's
yeah,
a
I
different
did.
problem altogether, just go try and get a replacement. If it's something completely different, oh, and Walmart even had them on sale for 150. Shit, that's a hell of a deal for them because they're still a great player. I stand by it. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with the player. I don't think if you're having the same problem, it's the same thing I ran into. I thought it went to shit, but what happened was there was some update or something that went through, or some combo of having something on in the settings makes it to where the Dolby Vision fucks up. So I've had to reset it, and I just left it alone. I didn't mess with no other settings. And I just left it as is. The only sound setting I went in messed up with was my sound setting that I had to deal with, but that was it. Other than that, I was like, no, I'm not touching nothing else now.
Yeah.
Because there's got to, and I'll just wait, and eventually I'll update it, but I'll just wait. There's no reason for me to update it.
Well,
I just took it offline, and
they'll
but
come out with a
unfortunately, if you're
patch.
using it for other things, that sucks. But I think you can turn off automatic updates in your settings. So what I would do is just that hasn't happened yet. Oh, okay. Well, if you're having a totally different problem, and hopefully you haven't had it that long, just go try and exchange it, man. It might just be a bad one.
Yeah, let us know what's going on with it.
Yeah, that might just be a bum one. Because otherwise I've had no issues with it till this last couple weeks here, and that's what happened. And it's
Do a Google
only
search on it too. I mean, a lot of times
yeah,
you'll find forums other people are saying, "Hey, my player's doing this too," and then somebody in there invariably has a fix or has a reason.
but for some reason it's only when the Dolby Vision. Any other time, anything else, it plays just fine. I don't know what it is, but if that's not your problem, then Ryan, take it back and exchange it. That might be something completely different on that part. Yeah, you're gonna run into that sometimes, but otherwise, I've had no problems with that player, and I've had mine for a couple months now. And the picture that it does for the up convert is amazing. So I can't. I've not seen one that does better, and and for the price, you can't beat it. So and a Sony,
Oh
that.
yeah.
So hopefully you can get that sorted out. Um, oh, you're just wondering what to look for. Oh, he wanted to know which one it was.
Oh,
Oh, I
I
misinterpreted what you
misunderstood.
were saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's the UBP. Yeah. UBP
700.
X700.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that different from the 700M?
I think the 700M is just a little higher model, if I remember right.
I think that's the one I got. I don't remember
Yeah,
because
I think it's got I can't remember what's different on it, but it's just a little higher end version of it, I believe. Like the
okay.
upconvert and all that's the same, but I think you got something I can't remember. Maybe it's even certain specific inputs and outputs on it. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up. Yeah, updates and firmware always cause problematic shit. But I love this little Yuyo says, well, that's scary. Updates player firmware now. Problematic films won't play. That's what I'm scared of too. Yeah, that's what I'm scared of too. Why are you trying to watch this problematic movie?
Oh, the X700M is the newer version. I just looked it
Oh,
up on
okay.
Amazon. Yeah,
All
it's
right.
because I was wondering, I'm like, what the heck's the difference? Because the X700, if you can still find a 700, I mean, it's fine. I don't think they've changed anything
Yeah,
really.
that's what I've
The
got.
700M is 248 right now on Amazon.
I even got the box here.
Yeah. So, because I just bought mine a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. Yeah, the X700. So it's probably the same thing, guys. If you put them side by side, this is because this is what Sony does. They just stick another letter on it or change one letter, and it's the same damn player as last year, except it's got like now it's Netflix 2.1 or something.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's usually just one or two things different. Sometimes it can even just be an input or an output that's different. It's just yeah. And it usually causes just it to be a little bit higher end than the rest. But yeah, so let's see. What else are you guys talking about in the chat? Mike says the best thing about Fellowship of the Ring 4K was the green color timing from the Blu-ray got thrown out.
Yes, agreed. I didn't even think about that.
That might even be one of those situations where you were talking about earlier, like with the Matrix, because that comes from a similar period.
It does. Well, but you know, the Matrix, the Matrix was one of those. I mean, it was supposed to be green, but then when they put it on Blu-ray, it was like really, really freaking green.
That's what I mean. And I think it was that's what my memory of the Fellowship was too. Because like I thought the theaters, I'm like, I don't remember it being this fucking.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But like in the theaters, you knew the Matrix had a green color grade overlay when they were in the Matrix. Fellowship, it was never meant to look green. So I don't know what happened when they did the transfer. Like they added some erroneous tint or something I'll put it this way. It did not look awful on the Blu-ray. It didn't look terrible. But yeah, when you started watching it on 4K, it's like, I mean, immediately I was like, I got to get the Blu-ray out. I was like, wait. But no, he's right. There was a shift. But it was a good shift.
Yeah, hopefully it's good because, like I said, I watched what I watched of it. Looked pretty good to me. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. What else we got? I did hear Ghostbusters is coming out again in 4K, but I don't know if they're adding anything to it. I think it's just a new re-release. That's something we didn't get into is the new Blu-ray news. For those who are fans of Jackie Chan's Armor of God, that's getting a 4K restoration. Clint Eastwood's Cry Macho is coming out on 4K, I believe, December 7th.
Yep.
And then, other than that, we got, I don't think we got to these last week. This was 5 days ago, so it shouldn't have. We got an update on some of the Criterion Hard Day's Night coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We knew the titles, but now we got some updates. We got The Piano coming, Dick Johnson is Dead, The Celebration, and Time. So yeah, and looks like I'm going to be picking up Hard Day's Night again.
Yeah, I was going to say that's coming in on that's I think that's Criterion, and then there was I know there was another Dune edition. I was trying to find it. Like it was supposed to be like a 7-disc.
Are you talking about the German one that Andre and I are trying to get our fucking hands on?
Yes.
This one got delayed. Yep.
Yeah.
It got delayed, but it's
we're trying. Well, it's saying February 10th. So it was originally supposed to be.
That's the one that has the Spice Diver edit on Blu-ray in 720p.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the box looks beautiful, and this is one of those things where the delay is funny because I'm reading this. It's like because the difficulty in producing, and I'm reading this from Digital Bits, the special quote noble acrylic glass box packaging for the release, and it's got a picture of it. It's just like, dang, acrylic. So I'll buy it just to have. I got my acrylic glass copy of Dune.
I know Andre and I are just like drooling over it.
I know. I want one, but and then at the same time they have The Running Man.
Yeah,
Arnold
you were talking about
Schwarzenegger's The
that.
Running Man, a 3-disc limited collector's edition in media book packaging, 4K Dolby Vision HDR10, Blu-ray and Blu-ray bonus disc. This is also that's a 4K. It's supposed to be a new 4K remaster. But this is I think
It's
that's
probably the
also
one
from
that's
Kosh.
out there already, but like, yeah, Studio Canal remastered that one along with. For some reason, they haven't released it here yet, though.
But
But it
I've
isn't
seen that.
digital.
I
It's in
have
digital, but
Yeah, I mean, but I've seen that so many times, like, and I think you and I have the same set. We talked about this before, the Carpenter box set. I had to get it from the UK because they didn't release it here. And you had Prince of Darkness,
I have them
The
separately.
Fog.
But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I couldn't find The Fog in 4K here, like not a US release. And I said,
yeah, it
well, they
hasn't
had
come
that
out yet in the US.
exactly. So I'm like, well, I'll just buy the box set with The Fog and Prince of
I
Darkness,
have a
and
feeling them are going to be part of the see because that's the thing is it's been like Studio Canal will release them over there in the UK, and then usually Shout's been releasing them here in the US.
hmm
Other than the Thing, we got the Thing in 4K, but from straight from Universal.
hmm
So I'm thinking that's going to be the same kind of thing in the next. Like, I bet you the next big Scream 4K is going to be a couple more of the John Carpenter movies, the rest of them, and probably I don't know what else they would have up, but no, The Running Man is a different scenario. Why that hasn't been released here yet, I don't know. We just got Total Recall finally.
I know. I'm reading this now and I'm thinking to myself, I wish I could read German.
But yeah, I think The Fog will probably be one of Shout's next ones. You can usually run a
Google Translate. I know.
translator
I'm
on
on
it.
Safari right now, but no,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm basically on the order page. It's basically 30 euros. So
Yeah, that's not too bad.
no.
Morgan King says, "Hey Tom, I just bought a 4K TV last month, and the sound that comes from it sounds like it's coming from a tin can. What can I do to fix this?" Yes, this is a common issue. There's a few things you can do. Depending on your budget and where you live, your situation, you can get a home theater system, which nowadays you can get several to cover your budget, depending on what you're looking for, or you can go for a sound bar. I'm not a big fan of bars personally, but I hear that they're getting a little bit better. They're actually, they've got some nice packages out there that you can buy even satellite speakers for and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
So
didn't like them either, but I bought one about a year ago. It's in
I've
my
been thinking
bedroom
about
for that
getting one for
TV.
this one up here. Yeah, like
I
just
love it.
for
And I've always, I mean, used to work in high end audio, so of course we hated Bose. But I'll give Bose credit for the things that they do make really well. Some of their headphones are excellent, and things like the sound bars that they make are really really good for the money. And that's
yeah,
always what I look at is for the money. People that used to spend three, four, $5,000 on these Bose systems, I was never a big fan of. You could get a lot better for your money, in my opinion, that was out there. But I bought a Bose sound bar, and it's on the TV, and I think I paid it was less than $200, and it sounds great. It's perfect for that. So if you have a small budget and you don't necessarily have the
the room.
capacity
Yeah,
for or the room for surround sound, and you just want a really really good sounding system so you can watch movies to enjoy it, but you just like I said, you just don't have the budget or the space to do anything more sophisticated. Definitely look into some like the Bose soundbar or something like that. They're
yeah,
excellent. Now they do
absolutely.
have some
Mhm.
soundbar systems that will come with some satellite speakers
That's what
that
I'm
you
talking
can
about. Yep.
put around the room too. It just depends on what you want to spend. So,
Yeah.
let us know what your budget is and then maybe we can shoot your recommendation.
Yeah, and I don't know for sure the fog is coming from Shout. I'm just assuming probably because they've been pretty much in tandem releasing
Mhm.
the 4Ks from Shout Factory as Studio Canal's been releasing them overseas. It's a couple months later, it seems like. Um, Stan Lee is right. I heard at least there are
Mhm.
some good Atmos soundbars out there now too. In fact, Yuyo brought up Techmoan earlier in the chat. I'm a fan of his. He actually reviewed a Sony Dolby Atmos soundbar with a pair of satellite speakers, and he was impressed. And if he's impressed by it, then I got to say that that means sound bars have come a long way, baby. Because
They
yeah,
have. Sony's got some nice ones, and
yeah.
Samsung has a pretty decent one. I had to go back because I was actually looking at these because I almost did this in my bedroom because I'm like, well, this is, but then my wife would kill me because I'm putting in a freaking subwoofer and
Otherwise,
everything else. But I'm
I mean, if you have a bigger budget and you have the room, I would definitely go with a surround sound system. Like you can get a
oh yeah.
nice receiver. If you can spend $1,000, get a nice set of speakers. I
Hmm.
mean, even if you just want a nice boom, you can, and you're on a very tight budget. One
Hmm.
thing I've done is if I got a little setup that I've got two really nice speakers for. Just go buy a little receiver from like a little 2-channel receiver will even
Yeah.
give you a nice little boost
That's what I
compared to
got
what you're
back
used to.
here.
Yeah, I saw that before.
Two-channel
Yeah.
stereo. It's a Cambridge
Yeah.
Audio. I mean, that's all I use, and this is strapped to some really nice speakers. But this is where I actually really watch it because the TV in my other room is still my Panasonic gas plasma high definition set. I love it so much, and it still works great. I don't want to get rid of it. But this is where I watch a lot of video stuff. But my home theater is actually in there. And you don't have to go. I mean, I've got a separate preamp and 5-channel power amp and all that kind of goofy stuff, but you don't, which you can do these days for $1,000 for a
Oh
complete
God.
home theater setup is
Let me put it to
crazy.
you this way. That's basically what I spent on mine. And I
Yeah.
have one of the most insane home theater sound systems I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's Dolby Atmos. Now the receiver I have now, I believe is I don't know if it's available anymore, but it's an Onkyo.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's still
It's
around.
one of
Used
the
to sell
better
them.
Atmos ones.
Hmm.
And I spent a little bit on the speakers too, but you can do it for cheaper than that. Like I only spent 400 something on the surround sound system
Hmm.
itself, and then the rest of it was all on speakers. And I ended up buying, some all new speakers because didn't want to use any old ones. I was just
Oh, Lord. I
fuck
just
it.
realized Denon is even making sound bars now. I bet those are
There
great.
you go. I bet you. Yeah, I've never heard them, but yeah,
I mean, the Denon ones are, you know, or now they have one on here. I said Bose, and I'm like, they have a
yeah,
Bose sound bar on here that's like $500. Now that's not the one I got. They had another one that was like $200, and they got some, but I mean, it just depends. I mean, some of these sound bars you see them, it's like it's one sound bar, but it's all 5 or 6
yep,
channels. And what it does is it just has speakers angled out to
yep.
use wall reflections to put the sound behind you, so you're hearing the bounce.
The only problem with that is depending on your room.
Yeah.
Again, if you have a room that's a nice small square and you got some nice open walls for the most part, those are going to work the best in that kind of situation.
Hmm.
But if you have an oddball room and you have the room for speakers, even if it's like shelf speakers, I would go with something like that.
Yeah.
Just because it's easier to make the sound better for you, because a lot of those sound bars, Valiant is right, they're set up on the idea that they're set up in a specific way to be able to bounce off the sound, and if your room is not set up correctly, it's not going to
Hmm.
sound right.
And my Bose sound bar is just a 2-channel bar. It's not a surround
Yeah,
sound, but again, it's my bedroom. I don't need anything too crazy. But yeah, I'm looking at this little Sony one they have on here. Now, I mean, if you just want a bar, the Sony HTX 8500, it's a 2.1 channel, so it does compress it down to a 2-channel, but it does process Dolby Atmos. And that's what's important. It doesn't necessarily have to deliver 5 channels or 7 channels. You just need a sound bar that can take a digital input from a receiver or a
yeah, it'll still
television
process
or
all the
yeah,
sound.
it has to be able to process the Dolby Atmos signal and then turn it in. It will compress it down to a 2-channel, but you still get that uncompressed level of audio. It
My
just
then
won't. Yeah,
question would also be is what do you watch on it, right? Like that's the bigger question too. Like
right.
what do you normally watch? If you watch a lot of streaming and regular television, all you really need is a 2-channel, because most stuff that comes through streaming and television is 2-channel. But if you watch a lot of movies like I do on disc and stuff like that, and you care about watching stuff through like 5.1 or better surround sound, like that kind of a thing, and I mean better as in more
Yeah.
numbers, not better as in, because it only depends on your subjective nature of how you want to listen to it.
Hmm.
But yeah, like if you're somebody who just watches mostly like TV and stuff like that, YouTube and all that kind of stuff, a 2-channel soundbar is going to do you just fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, if you're somebody who watches a lot of Blu-rays and stuff, you might want to think about a 5.1 or better system.
Especially if you love watching a lot of like action movies. And that's the big thing. It's
Exactly.
more about
Yes.
the genre that you're watching. So if you watch a ton of that kind of stuff where that there's soundtracks, but if you like watching things like we brought up Cry Macho or
Yeah.
Unforgiven or some of those kind of words.
Halloween, even.
Halloween, it's dialogue. There's not a lot going. You don't need surround speakers. If that is your bread and butter, I wouldn't waste. I would rather see you spend more money buying a better quality two channel system than trying to stretch those dollars out to put in 5 and 6 speakers that frankly you're never going to use.
Exactly. And again, if you live in an apartment, sometimes you can't have like a subwoofer and all that kind of shit. And again, that's where a sound bar comes in a little bit more handier. So again, hopefully we probably over explained your question, but that way, hopefully it helps anybody else who may have a question like that. And Mike kind of agrees with me here. Fog and Escape from New York are MGM titles, so they'll probably come from Shout. And yeah, They Live and Prince of Darkness are more than likely going to come from Universal.
Well, they already had a 4K of They Live come out.
I was going to say both They Live and Prince of Darkness did come out and Shout, though. So I'm wondering on that, too. I wonder, it'll be interesting to see. Like, Universal, I think the only reason they did The Thing is because it is such a big seller.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason, honestly, Mike, why I think that Universal decided to do The Thing. And I think they're going to do the same thing with Legend, even though they don't want to tell us that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not going to get into that discussion right now because that's a whole nother ball game. But yeah, helicopters and Atmos. And yeah, Yu-Yo, I don't get to watch as many movies as I'd like to be honest with you.
Tom doesn't sleep, man. Don't you know that?
Yeah, that's the other problem.
He hasn't slept since 2012.
Take care, Willie.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to be wrapping things up here pretty soon anyway. I just wanted to see if you guys had any more questions for us that we can answer for you today. Let's see here. Russ asks, is Atmos the 3D? Yes, Sadie, I know. You were just out too, and you can wait. It says, is Atmos the 3D object sound-based system, i.e. streams are tied to locations, not speaker channels, mixed receiver? Yes. Yes, that is correct. And what that is a new signal processing, because it used to be you would have 5 or whatever separate channels of sound, no matter what it was. You just set it up, and that's the way it would come through the mix from beginning to end. You know, they would send it down the road. Yes, Sadie, I know, baby. But with Atmos now, it's a completely different setup. It actually communicates between the system, what you have, your speaker setup, and all these things, and it calibrates it in a way that will sound like it's supposed to sound in your system and setup. So if you have 9 speakers, it'll calibrate it for 9 speakers. If you only have 7 speakers or whatever, it'll set it up for that, and so on and so forth. Like I have a 5.4.1 setup, right? Mm-hmm. And that's 5 of the standard, like a 5.1 setup, plus 4 Atmos speakers, and the 0.1 obviously being a subwoofer. So in my setup, what it does is it calibrates it for 4 Atmos speakers and the rest, and so on and so forth. So it is a little bit different experience. And it's new technology, and they're really, it's really, I think where it really first started was in video games. Am I wrong, Valliant? Like that was where they really came up with it. First.
I'm trying to. I think the concept may have come
like
from
that because that was the whole idea. Is they needed to be able
3D
to make
movement.
Exactly, they need to be able to do a sound that would do it correctly. Yeah,
yeah, but I don't know if that was. I mean, I don't know if Dolby Laboratories really developed that for games, but I think they kind of used it as a baseline to come up with the construct for what they did for theatrical releases for home theater.
Because like if I remember playing like Grand Theft Auto in 5.1, and when I would spin around in my guy, it would sound like the sound was spinning around me in real time. And that's why I hated playing something in 2.0 like that kind of a game as opposed to 5.1, because then I could hear which way the bad guys were coming and shooting at me from.
Yeah. And that's why they did it. I mean, they wanted it to be to that more real to life experience, and that's that's what they brought.
And that's what I thought was that they were
the only drawback is you now have to have more speakers.
And they're basically translating that to film now, basically. So yeah.
But if you don't have those more speakers, it's okay. The sound quality in Atmos on a 4K should sound much better. Anyway, because it's less compression, it's higher bit rate. You're getting more of the original track that isn't compressed or smashed down to fit on a disc like a Blu-ray or a DVD. Now you have so much more room. They can give you almost, and they do call it lossless, but they're getting you damn close, or the closest you'll ever get to the original soundtrack that was on the big giant mixing board in a $5 million mixing room in a Hollywood studio. You're getting that now.
The thing is, the sound has been ahead of the curve for a while. Like picture is just finally catching up with it as far as home video and home media
It's
goes.
because of the discs.
Yeah.
I mean, because a Blu-ray, you would get 25
DVD
gigs
even has great audio on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it does, because again, the audio tracks is not what consumes the space, right? I mean, if you want to get, and that's why I like the Lord of the Rings, the 4K extended editions, and that's what I was glad, Peter Jackson didn't skip on that. He kept it just like the Blu-rays. Each movie is 2 4K discs. He did not try to compress the shit out of it down onto one disc. Just like the Blu-rays, he said, extended editions, he could have crushed it and compressed it to one disc. He didn't. He left it at a high bit rate. He wanted to maximize the picture quality. The soundtrack does not consume that much space, but he needed 2 100 gigabyte 4K Blu-ray discs to get each of those 3 movies extended edition out to people.
Yeah, I mean, it stands right here on some movies. Like, true HD track can take up a lot of room.
Well, yeah,
but again, and but DVD audio is a great thing too, and that's why I've bought a lot of albums on DVD audio, because they give you the high bit rate audio right there on the DVD or the Blu-ray and shit like that. It's really awesome, and that's where some people, I'm just like, record schmeckard. Like, go listen to Dark Side of the Moon and fucking 5.1 surround sound, and then get back to me. Like,
there's definitely improvements that's happened in Stan, like what you just said. True HD track. Yeah, it can be 10 gigs. It depends on the, if they're recording it in, 24-bit 96K or something like that. But I mean, I have recorded in 2496. We were talking earlier, like when I do the camera work, when I do dance recitals, I've got to bring in all that audio. I'm actually recording now. It's 2-channel, but I'm recording in 2496, and some of those recording tracks, it will go straight on for 2.5, 3 hours, and then I stop it when the show's over. And usually that Apple Logic Pro X file, their sound software.
Oh yeah, you use Apple stuff.
It's usually 3 to 4 gigs. And that's 2 channels. So yeah, if you're mixing down something that's 5, 6, 7 channels, you can get up to that point. But realistically, I mean, after I take that same 2496 and I put it in a 24-bit file, it's down to like a gig. So there is some level of compression, but it's still fairly, I mean, you're as close to lossless as can be. Put it this way, it's virtually inaudible, the difference between the original and what I've rendered out as a final product.
They've come a long way with audio. I mean, they've been ahead of the curve, like I said, on that for a while.
Yeah.
So let's see what else we got here. M. Bowser points out that the Justice League Snyder Cut is also on 2 discs, so I would probably suspect, considering how long it is.
It's 4 freaking hours. You have to. That's Return of the King, dude. That's 4 hours.
And this is another thing that's true too, that Brian brought up here as well, going back to the question from earlier. If you are able to have, like, if you live in a place that's not like an apartment or something like that, and you're able to have a subwoofer, that'll make a world of difference. Even if you just have a little 2-channel setup with a subwoofer, like
just don't overcrank
it. Most
people tend to overcrank the subs, and you get the bass is like too much.
But you'd be surprised how much a nice little sub can add to your.
These 2 Joseph Audio RMX 25Is that I have here, these 2 towers speakers that I have. Now they're a dual 6.5-inch woofer in there. I still have down there a little Velodyne 10-inch sealed powered sub.
Nice.
So I still, like I said, to your point, you're absolutely right, because as great as these speakers are, I mean, I still love them to death. But when I'm watching movies, they can't kind of reach some of that lowest depth, and that sub really picks it up. And it doesn't even have to be a big action movie. Sometimes in just regular movies, there's bass like Halloween, great example. There's a lot of good bass information in there, and you want that.
Dune. My God. I'll tell you, the sound. This is how much of an important part the Dune sound plays. And this was my system doing a 5.1.
Oh, I'm waking. The kids are waking up tonight, folks.
A 5.1 mix
tonight and watch
up
Dune.
Converted to Atmos. There's a scene where I almost got dizzy. I think it's the same scene that Andre was talking about, because the sound is so fucking good. It goes with the picture so well that I was like, oh my God, I'm getting dizzy. Like, it's because like it just feels like you're toppling over with them, and just the way that when the motors and certain things kick in this movie, it's just like, and you're like, you feel it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like a subwoofer can make a world of difference to your
My daughter's gonna
experience.
be pissed at me tonight. She's gonna come downstairs.
Oh,
Dad, do you know what time it is? I don't care. It's
plus there's a lot
Dune.
of
Now she's reading the Dune books
stuff.
right now, so I was like, she's supposed to come watch this with
Well,
me.
that's good.
So
Hopefully you guys get it in tonight. It's only 2.5 hours long.
No,
so.
I know. I'll probably start watching
Without the credits. I think it's like 2:20.
Yeah, I'll probably start watching around 9:30 by the time I get back home. So.
Yeah, and as Mike says, yeah, the thing is a big catalog seller, so that's why I know that's why they didn't mess around with that one.
Yeah,
and they did the same thing with a couple of the Criterion titles too, like Do the Right Thing, and they did Doctor Strangelove on Sony. Did the same thing. That wasn't Universal, but same difference. Yeah, let's see if we got one or two more questions we can take, and then we'll close her out. How's that sound?
Absolutely. Oh, wait, I see your comment. Channel Surf, you have the same Velodyne sub. And as you said that, I realized I pointed to the wrong one. I do have a Velodyne sub. It's in the other room on my other system. This one's actually a Martin Logan. I just remembered that. I was like, but yes, I love the Velodynes too. Yeah. Used to sell them.
Yeah. Going back here a little bit to see if we missed any questions from you guys. We've been keeping up with it pretty good. Yeah, and as to go with the Atmos thing is, instead of mixing each channel separately, they can just place the sound anywhere in a 3D space in your system. It will mix it for you. Exactly. Thank you.
It's like an intelligent surround sound system. Yeah, actively, it's actively adapting to the source it's playing and your room.
Yeah, and some of the, as far as like reference quality Atmos tracks that I've heard so far, The Doors is probably one of the best ones. My God, did they do a great job with that one? And they really played with the Atmos in that one.
I tell you what blew me away was the 4K of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh yeah, that one sounds good.
And if all you do is go into the menu and watch the 20-minute Live Aid, because the Live Aid scene at the end was much longer. They shot a lot more stuff, and it's not in the movie, but it's in the menu.
Yeah, they shot the entire concert. Yeah,
it's in the menu as a special feature, and the damn thing's like 20 minutes long.
Yeah,
I'll throw that disc in and just turn that special feature on and just sit back for 20 minutes and get pushed through a wall. I mean, that's it. Yeah.
I actually have that actual performance on disc. Let's see here. There was one about Dolby Atmos headphones. Now, I know there's some fancy headphones you can buy that actually have little speakers built into them. Now, if you want to spend that kind of money. Otherwise, I know there's like a process that Dolby has now. You can even get it on your phones. Like you just download the app, and it just kind of
that's not doing much, folks.
Fake Dolby Atmos in yours. It just kind of makes it sound like it.
You still have to have speakers and a good system that can deliver it, because you got to remember that the dynamics of the sound, you cannot get that kind of dynamic range on most headphones, number one, unless you really spend a lot of money. Number two, you're certainly not going to get it off these tiny little things on the phone. So you can get something, but if you can do a sound bar, you'd be much better off. Yeah.
And Yuya wants to know, does an Atmos system do the self-calibration? In most cases, yes. I let mine do a self-calibration, but then I ended up going back in and recalibrating, because it just didn't work the way I wanted it to.
There's a personal taste thing to it. Yeah. I like my system. I've got a Marantz preamp. It's an AV 8803. Yeah, I think an 8803 that's in there. And those Marantz preamps will come with it actually has a little microphone, so you plug it in when you set it up in your room. And I've used some of my camera tripods and light stands, and I just put the microphone on that, and it just has you move it around to 8 different positions of the room, and it basically throws sine waves and white noise through all the speakers, and that microphone just monitors, and then it goes in and it calibrates the equalization. It basically automatically EQs the receiver. But like Tom's, I didn't like what it came up with, and I went back in and I tweaked it a little bit. So but look, for most people are not going to nerd out on this shit like we will.
No.
And you're going to listen to it and it's going to go, it sounds awesome. And it does.
Right. Well, that's the best part, is a lot of these now are set up to basically work right out of the box. Sony for years, I got it up here in this room right now. They had a 5.1 system that I stand by. It's a beaut. Got tiny little square speakers, nice subwoofer. You used to be able to get it for a steal. And it's one of the best 5.1 systems I've ever had. And so you'd be surprised. And all that shit's right out of the box. Sony. It's an old Sony.
Sony system. I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Yeah. It was just
those are the kind of things, and
it was a box system. It came with the speakers and everything like that. whatever. You just pull it out, set it up, set your speakers up, good to go. I mean, that of course
That's
even
why I
had
told
a
people years
calibration
ago.
thing with it too, but I didn't need to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I was going to say that's why I told people years ago about, you don't have to spend, and again, I'm going back 25 years at this point. At the time it was like $2,000 or $2,500 for those Bose systems, late 90s, early 2000s. And it was like it's like you don't have to go that crazy. And they would come into the store to be like, because this is what they would sell at the big box stores. They'd come in and we'd have a little Boston Acoustics system for half the price, $1,200. And we literally, like, we had a Bose system in the store we just used for side by side, and the $1,200 system from Boston Acoustics smoked. And I mean, it wasn't even close. It was ridiculous. Just smoked that system. Point being is that you can still get, like you say, you can spend $400 or $500 and get a nice little box set. If you have like a regular size room, if we're
that one
not
was
talking
actually more
about
like two, but yeah.
But that my point is, if you have a small room, especially for you folks, if you're in an apartment and you have a room that's maybe 10 by 15, no, you don't need giant speakers. It's you can get really, really good sound from a nice little simple system, either from like the Sony box set, if your range is $200 to $300-$400. If you want to go a little bit more than that and again, I'm just talking about the speakers. If you want to go to the 500 to 1,000, there might be something else. If you want to go 1,000 to 1,500, there's probably something else. And I mean, if people have more questions on that kind of stuff, look, we can talk about it on another show, I'm sure. But
absolutely.
But yeah, but like I said, like we used to sell the crap out of those Boston Acoustic systems, and then Definitive Technology. When DefTech first came out, and it was basically DefTech was started by the same guy who designed all the speakers for Polk, Sandy. Can't remember his last name, but I mean, it was another one of those things where it's $9.99 for a 5-channel, 5.1 channel. It's basically 5 little satellites, with a center and a subwoofer. That thing smoked some of the stuff the big box stores sold for $2,000 and $3,000.
Well, and the best thing is like they set those up for that way, and that's what I'm saying. Like that's the best part of a lot of stuff nowadays is a lot of it's just plug and play right out of the box, and the most you have to do is set up your system to like send the audio out through the HDMI cord, and that's about it. Sometimes, like it used to be a pain in the ass, or I would go over to my friend's house and realize, oh, they're like, oh, I got this new 5.1 system, and all they're boasting it up, but they didn't have it hooked up right, so they're still sending 2 channels out to 5 channels.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so like you'd have to tell them how to.
But that's the cool thing with the Atmos is that,
yeah,
and that's the biggest thing, is having the system EQ it basically for your room. That makes a huge difference. Is having an equalization that is already and an amplifier, especially, which but if you buy a sound bar, they have built-in amplifiers. All these little things will have built-in amplifiers that are already EQ'd and built to work specifically for those little speakers. So you can really get a lot more for your money today than you could just 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
Trust me.
Like
in terms of sound quality.
And then the ease of just using HDMI as well is so much easier than hooking things up the way it used to be and going through the settings and doing everything you had to do to set things up. And yeah, and Stan,
for a living, man.
Oh, I know, right, man? Like, and Stan Lee says, but I'm surprised that those up-firing Atmos speakers really work. Yeah, if you have the right environment, they do work pretty well. See, now my situation was I had 2 tallest ceilings, so I had to.
That's what I was going to say. If you got like 12-foot ceilings. Yeah.
Yeah, I have firing speakers, but I just ended up flipping them and just setting the system up to work as regular speakers, because then what the system does is calibrate them differently. But yeah, and then there was
you have an 8 to 9 foot ceiling like most people, they'll work great for you.
Yeah.
And
if you haven't set up right, but the best way to do it is either go through your manual or just go, like, even YouTube has a lot of places where guys are setting them up and they'll tell you exactly how many feet you have to have them from which direction and all that kind of stuff. So there was another question here I wanted to grab. Well, we did get a super chat.
I just saw
Bruno Santos says, my wife's bitching at me about wires in the new house we are building. Any good wireless speaker setup? Great show, by the way. If you're building,
pre-wire,
put them in the wall. Put them in the wall. It's easy. In fact, there's tons of videos out there to show you how to do it. And the best thing is you can even get like these things that are like outlets. You can stick them right in the wall and you can run your wires through there and all that kind of business. Because even with wireless speaker systems, you still have to have a fucking power source.
Bingo. That's what
fucking hate that.
And
So,
I used to tell customers that all the time because I had to say, and this was 20 years ago again, because exactly the same thing. And I used to design pre-wiring in new spec houses. And this is what we would do. We'd go through this conversation. They said, well, what about just doing wireless? I'm like, why? You've got the walls open right now, the sticks are up. You got the electrician in there running his Romex. I'll send my crew out there and then we'll just run all of our
and if you're
Cat 5
worried,
for communication and everything. And it's in the wall. And that's what people didn't understand is like you put a wireless speaker, you still have to get it power. You can't
yep.
wirelessly transmit electricity to it.
No, you still have to plug the damn thing in.
Yeah. So that means you have to stick outlets on your wall. I'm like, no, don't do that. So
It's a
yeah, even
pain
if
in
you
the
want to use a
ass.
bookshelf and mount it to the wall, like Tom said, you can use an electrical box, a rough-in electrical box, have the speaker wire
Well, they
fed
make
into
them
that.
directly to them, yeah.
Yeah. Or
And you
you
can
can do
have
in wall. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, or you can even put them in the wall. Yeah, that's another way of doing it. And the best thing is even if you gotta worry, you don't wanna have to worry about, like, the wires. You don't Of course, you don't wanna use some chintzy wire. You're actually gonna wanna use some big gauge wire or this is something that I've seen a lot of people use, and they stand by it, and I can understand why, using electrical wire. Like, you get, like, extension cord wire, but
Mm,
because it's the same kind of material inside, but the wiring casing on the outside lasts longer. So you don't have to worry about drying out as fast. But they do higher end speaker wire. You're better off just doing that. But if you're on a budget, you can do it that way.
You don't have to go real high in with it though. I mean, we used to use, depending on what we were running, but it was usually like a
Yeah.
14-2 twisted pair. So you'd have your red and black, and it was twisted. And then
Okay.
inside, now as long as you get an in-wall rated cable, and this is the mistakes people make.
That's the bigger deal.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like, and they're not. And when you're doing it, if you're having somebody out come in, you're talking about maybe it's going to be so many pennies a foot. You don't have to go crazy with it, but a twisted pair, and then it's got an outer jacket over it. So you've got your red and
Right.
your black, and then I think the 14 gauge typically would come in a yellow jacket because they try to code them. The coloring on the wires, they try to code it differently than a Romex. So if you open your wall, you see electrical cable. It's that white jacket. So they try to do speaker cables in either blue or yellow or something like that. So, but no, you can do that because the idea is instead of Romex is side by side and it tends to be a solid core. I'd prefer that you use an in-wall speaker cable that's twisted, number one, because the twisting of the cables itself is a noise rejection component. When they're twisted like that, it tends to reject more RF radio frequency stuff.
Yeah. And
And
I
then,
think that's another reason
yeah,
why they were talking about the electrical, like the
yeah.
same way you would get. But yeah, you're probably better off doing what you're saying.
Just
Yeah.
don't run the speaker wire right next to the electrical line. Like, don't
That's
pass
the
them through
big
the same
thing.
holes.
Yeah.
That's the problem people would always make, and that's why it's like, no, that's when we went out and did it, it's like we drill our own holes. I promise you, if you get the electrician to do it, he's gonna drill
They'll
holes
fuck
through
it
your
up.
studs, and then he's gonna pull the speaker cable right along with his electrical line, sitting right on top of one another, and then you're gonna wonder why your surround channels are 60 hertz humming. Yeah, just yeah.
But yeah, like you can even get, like you said, these nice little outlets that have the input on one end that you put right behind your receiver, and then, or you can even build your receiver right into the, like a little cubby and stuff like that, and do it that way too. And then
Yep.
just wherever your speakers are going to go, you can either build them right into the ceiling for like Atmos,
Mhm.
and you can even put them in the sides if you want to. And that's the other thing is you can even find built-in speakers, like you can find them pretty cheap. Like they're not that expensive. In fact, I've seen some that are cheaper than buying a box speaker in most
Yeah,
cases. So yeah,
probably.
and they're nice flat and they've got a nice color. So like the wifey can pick which color she wants to go with the room,
Or you can paint them.
and you can paint them in some
I've
cases
got
as
in
well.
ceiling speakers in there that I got, and I mean it's usually the trim and the grills. The grills are removable, so you can remove the grills. You just cover the back with
True.
little
Yeah.
little bit of saran wrap or something, and then you spray it. Spray the trim the same color. Stick it back in the ceiling. Good to go.
The only reason I'm not a fan, I mean, I like built-in speakers, are great. I just never owned a home, so I could do it. The only other thing I could see it being a problem is you want to set them up in a way that you can replace them if need be.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for that, Bruno. I appreciate that. And I think we're going to be wrapping things up here because it looks like you got to get running here from the way you're.
No,
acting
no,
as
no. I said one of the kids just got home, but I've got
oh,
to take a different kid.
yeah, I know you gotta
We've got
run
to
here
leave in
soon.
about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah,
So
so I know we're gonna start wrapping it up here. Do check out Valiant Renegade's channel. This was the other question I wanted to grab here too. Oral 3D audio. This is not something I know too much about. All I know is I
Oral
have one
3D.
disc, maybe two, that actually has it on there.
I don't know
And I
them.
think it's just another version of Atmos, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm gonna look that up because
Because when I
honest.
play, because the only movie I have with that on it is Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Oh yeah. Okay.
and it plays through Dolby Atmos like a Dolby Atmos track. So I'm assuming it's just another version, just not the Dolby name.
It is.
Um,
And that's why it's on that Marantz that I have. There is an RO 3D feature on that Marantz AV 8803 preamp, the home theater preamp I've got. Now, I never fool with it because in order to actually either turn it on or upgrade it or something, I had to, it was like $200. Like it's
mm,
there, but it's been a while since I fiddled with it,
I don't know
but
enough about
I've
it to really
never
comment.
had
Yeah,
a cause to fool with it because, if I'm running 4K or Blu-ray and I'm getting Dolby True HD or, DTS Master
Atmos or
Audio,
whatever. Yeah,
Atmos or whatever's out there now. Yeah, I'm like, I don't
I
care.
think it's just another version of Atmos. And Channel Surf says yes. I'm assuming that's what he means. So I'll do
Mhm,
some look on that, and if not, I'm thinking it's just another company, that just a
mhm,
different name. He says, yeah, it's just a different company. And DTS X is basically their version of Dolby Atmos,
mhm.
right? So like this is probably just whatever company's version of that.
Yeah.
And that's because you have to pay for the name. Like,
Right. That's it.
yeah, yeah.
You can buy Dolby stock on the stock exchange. And I mean, they do well because they're a
Well, I mean, just
licensing
to be able to
company.
say it's Dolby Digital on your disc,
Exactly.
you actually
Yeah,
have to
every
pay
time you
them.
see Dolby printed on a
Yeah.
Blu-ray disc, every time you see Dolby in a theater, every time you see Dolby anywhere, I mean, they're getting money.
Stan says it's supposed to support more channels. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is with Atmos now, they can actually support, I think, up to almost endless number of channels as long as your
It's
system supports it.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost a ridiculous amount. It's really weird. Yeah, and you have to pay DTS and Dolby for the license name. Yeah,
Oh
you
yeah.
totally do. It sucks, but you do. But yeah, so we're gonna start wrapping this up here. But Bryant did have one quick question I think we can answer. He wants to know, why are 4K players and movies so expensive? Well, nowadays they're not much different from Blu-rays, to be honest with you. In fact, I just pointed out a couple titles where you're almost better off buying the 4K edition, even if you don't have, and we've been saying this for a while, but like you're looking at $2 or $3 difference, and you get a Blu-ray 9 times out of 10 with the 4K.
Yes.
So, and a
And,
digital copy.
and
So
if you go back 10 years ago and you look at before 4K and we had Blu-rays coming out, guess how much a Blu-ray disc was? About
same amount,
$25.
same amount.
Guess how much the 4K disc is now? $25.
And
Guess
4Ks
how
are
much the
starting to come
DVD movie
down.
was? $25.
Yeah, it's the same thing, and they're all starting to come
They
down. In
shipped them
fact,
down.
yeah,
Yep.
Warner is the only company outside of some boutiques that really are high end for their prices. Like
Mhm.
otherwise, though, Universal, Sony all have lines of films on 4K that run about $14 a piece that you can get that are great titles. So
Mhm.
that's a great way to start your collection. Otherwise, do what I think Valiant said he did too. Until you're ready to move and upgrade, um, just buy those, and then when you're ready to upgrade, you're ready to upgrade, and you have them already, and you have the Blu-ray copy in there. And why don't they include a DVD? Because it's just one extra thing they don't want to include.
And they've moved on because I mean, since 12 years ago when the Blu-ray format really started getting bigger and bigger, or 14 years ago, I don't know how long it's been now, but they
Blu-ray
just
is 2006, I think it was.
yeah. So we're 15 years into it. Their DVD's done. They're not
6 or
making that
7.
anymore because it's at this point. If you're on a DVD, you're probably watching digital copies. So when you're buying your 4K disc now, in addition to getting, like Tom said, a Blu-ray copy 99% of the time, there's also a digital copy included in there.
Yeah,
So you got a code, you open it up, there's a little slip of paper. All you do is hold your iPhone up to it. It's usually got a QR code and it goes
yeah,
right to Paramount Movies Register This Disc.com or
yeah.
whatever.
You
And
can
bing,
register through Movies Everywhere, and it'll,
yeah,
yeah,
movies everywhere, iTunes
or
or whatever
anywhere, or
whatever
whatever it
service
is.
they
Yeah.
use it. Yeah.
But no, like, why don't they include it though? Yeah, just cost reasons.
Mhm.
I still see some Blu-rays will have a DVD, but even a lot of those, if you buy the Blu-ray copy, it's just the Blu-ray and a digital copy now.
Yeah, I haven't seen a DVD in a Blu-ray disc, at least not in a more recent film. I haven't seen that in
In
it's
a
been
while.
5 years at least.
but yeah, at least they're still nice enough to include the regular Blu-ray copy. And I say nice enough, but no, 9 times out of 10 it's just so they don't have to put the fucking special features on the 4K.
Right.
And I know there's reasons for that, and that is so for future releases they don't have to pay for those special features. That's the other thing they're doing, is phasing out special features as we get along here too. So yeah, I've had to hang on to DVD copies just for fucking special features now. That's the sad part in certain cases. S8 SXHBKS, and this is not a dumb question. It is a very good question, actually. Says, I have a PS4 and a 4K TV. Can I play the 4K discs on it? No, you cannot.
No, PS4 will not do.
PS4 did not do 4K, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does.
It will do on the PS Pro play 4K gaming, and I believe it will play through streaming. But no, they did not make it compatible with 4K
the
discs.
disc
Now the PS5
is still it's still a Blu-ray disc transport, meaning the optical laser in there, whether it's a PS4, PS4 Pro, it's the same transport mechanism.
Yes,
that's it. It cannot read a 4K.
But
disc.
a PS4 Pro will do gaming and streaming in 4K. That part is true.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you otherwise, you're just gonna have to get a PS5 or just buy a standalone player. Like we've mentioned a few players that are pretty well priced, and that's another thing, Bryant, is just if you only have a DVD player now, that can be a problem, I guess. I don't know what to tell you on that. Other than hopefully you can still use the digital, perhaps, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you were to, do an intermediary approach, because Blu-ray players now, because of 4K players coming in, the Blu-ray players are just nothing. They're dirt cheap. And you can find a pretty darn good Blu-ray player for $50. Now, if you want to make the jump all at one time and you can do the $200 or whatever, do that. Look on eBay, find a used one. Somebody, some tech junkie probably bought a Sony 700 series, a couple of years ago or last year or whatever. And then when the 800 series comes out, they upgrade, they sell their old one. You might be able to get the old one for $100.
Yeah, and Panasonic makes great players too, as Girthy says here. He had a problem with his Sony. Sorry to hear you had a problem, but yeah.
Panasonic, I was mad when Panasonic stopped making TVs because they made the best TVs. The plasma sets they made were beautiful, but I'm so glad they actually still make the optical disc players, because their optical disc players were, especially for the money, I think were some of the best ones out there anywhere.
Yeah, but Xbox does play 4K. Like, that's one of the reasons I bought an Xbox. I've hardly ever played a game on it. No, just the One S does as well. The regular Xbox One. Yeah. I don't know about the first model. I'm not sure about, because as Mike says here, I can't remember if the very, 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 very first ones did.
I was never an Xbox guy. I don't know.
I thought they did, but I could be wrong. But he says they didn't. So it was just the One S. Yeah, that's what I have for that. Used to be my main Blu-ray player. That's why I bought a standalone player. I'm like, I don't want to burn this out. And for some reason, I can't figure out on my Xbox, it won't play shit through in Dolby Vision. It will on streaming, but it won't on the disc, even though I have Dolby Vision turned on. So between that and I just don't want to burn it out, I just
so it's definitely not the HDMI then, because sometimes
no,
the HDMI
it's just
protocols
it must be deciding to do the HDR10 if it has it available instead of the Dolby Vision.
That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know why. And I've looked in my TV to see if I've fucked with all the settings I can find and everything. So yeah. Okay, so according to Russ, it does not. So okay, I thought it did. So, but yeah. So get yourself a 1S if you can on Black Friday. That's what I did. I got it for dirt fucking cheap too. Brand spanking new. And it even came with the new Star Wars game. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I have that one too, Daniel. The 3D version with the DVD, the digital, and special features. Too bad the movie wasn't a little better, but yeah. It's actually a very great 3D film, though, like as far as the visuals, yeah. Movie's okay. It wasn't as bad as Covenant.
I'll give you that one. Yeah.
Shit. But yeah, so with that, I think we're gonna start wrapping things up here a little bit, because I know you got to get rolling. What do you got coming up on your channel?
Well, I kind of take it day to day. I mean, this week so far has been, obviously we've been discussing the big news with the delays with Marvel, with Indiana 5. I know you and Andre have had some tidbits coming in. Doomcock has. Things kind of tend to be floating around right now and getting a little interesting, and we're 10 days out from what is supposed to be Kennedy's renewal. And crickets so far, which is strange.
So far.
So keeping an eye. Yeah, so far. Could change, certainly, but the last time this came around, we knew more than a month in advance that this had happened. And then with this news of Indy 5 getting the brakes slammed on it like this at the 0 hour at this point for her, it's kind of got my head raised. And so going to be looking at that. I will say this: what I can tell you for sure that we've got coming up is I'm going to be probably not tonight because I'm going to be watching Dune. So sorry, folks, no video for me tomorrow, but probably Friday, if not Saturday, I will have both. I should have 2 videos out by then. One on the new Netflix numbers because they just reported yesterday, and some interesting numbers. The Squid Game numbers just blowing my mind. And then secondly, AT&T tomorrow morning will be reporting their quarterly numbers, and we will have another update on HBO Max. So
there you go.
Stay tuned for that.
And Girthy, real quick ass, was late for Halloween. Does it look great or just okay? It looks great. Best it's ever going to look, buddy. If you can pick up that Shout Factory disc that's out there right now, I'd go for it, despite them snafooing the release of it. And with that, I'm going to say check out Midnight's Edge After Dark. We do not have a physical media show tonight. Maybe I'll do some Mead Radio or something, or I'll see what else is going on. Otherwise, I think I'm going to be on the dump actually here in a little bit, so you can find me on there. So yeah, I think that's on Sporking News channel. So follow me over there. And until then, thank you again, Valliant, for a great show. Next week we'll have Mike on, and take care of yourselves and each other, kids. Wrong one. We got a last minute super chat.
Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, oh wait, hang on. That one just came in.
I didn't hit the end yet, luckily. Daniel Davis says, should I stick with a 4K player in my Xbox One X or get a UBP X700? Daniel, this all depends on what you watch. If you watch a lot of movies, I would probably get one. And especially if you're a gamer at heart, because you don't want to burn out your system. The uptick is the UBP has one of the best up conversions available right now. It makes DVDs and older Blu-rays look really, really good. In fact, almost comparable in some cases. I've checked, like I'll watch a movie in Dolby Vision, the regular 4K movie, and then I'll flip in the Blu-ray, which does its fake Dolby Vision that the thing does itself. It's pretty damn close. Like it's a pretty darn good upgrade. Like, unless you're really, 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 really paying attention to it, you might be able to like not even notice, especially if I was standing far enough away. I probably wouldn't notice. So like I outside of, don't turn on the upgrades and don't use it for anything else. That way you don't have to have it online for now until I tell you guys it's A-okay, because there's a problem with that upgrade for some reason. I don't know what the fucking deal is.
It might just be exclusive to the 700. It might
not
be an upgrade.
And it might even be just interacting with my TV. And it might, and see, the thing is funny is when I reset everything, I think I didn't have the upgrade thing on, but like it was another setting or something I had on. So like it still was connected. So I had to go back in and turn off the network settings and then reset everything. And since then I haven't had a problem again, but it did it once to me second time after it did it once before. So again, that has something to do, I believe, with a firmware update, nothing to do with the system itself. And it could even be something that's just my system, but I'm pretty sure because I never had the
quirky stuff out there.
It's just weird because I never had the problem until like last week, and then all of a sudden I got it fixed, and then had it happen again in the same night I was watching movies. It's like, what the fuck did I just do? And I think what it did is the upgrade in the background.
Well, Daniel, look, if it's like Tom said, if you watch a ton of movies, I mean, if you really are a movie buff and it's movie, then yes, get the separate player. It'll be worth it. I mean, if you're going to get the 700M, the newer version, like I said, everywhere I see it, it's about $250. If that's worth it to you, then do it. Otherwise, if you're more casual, the regular
700 is only $150 right now, I guess.
If you can find, I couldn't find them on. I don't think I couldn't find them on Amazon. But
Walmart, I think, has them exclusively. I think.
Oh well, then go get them from. Yeah,
that might be why.
Bucks. But yeah, if you watch a ton of movies and you're really going to build a 4K, and I don't mean streaming, I mean you're going to watch physical media, then yes, go. I mean, if you're going to build a 4K physical media library, then it would be worth it to you. Yes.
Brian actually says the 800 M2 is a bargain. And chances are, here's the thing.
298. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the differences there, but I'm assuming they have all the same kind of software and stuff in there. So that's the thing with a lot of these is they may be like Valiant was saying earlier, even though they may be a slightly different model, they probably all have a lot of the same software in them. It's just usually a variance somewhere. But no, I'm assuming that it might even be the same fucking software they use on the PS5. I don't have one, so I can't tell you. Because I know the PS3 had really good upconvert technology on it too for DVDs.
Yeah, I don't know what the big differences are between the 7 and the 800. I'd have to dig into it. I mean, it's probably, if I know Sony, it probably has to do with the actual chassis construction. So it's probably a little bit more insulated, a little bit more.
It could be a number thing or an extra input or output, even.
Yeah,
like I said, it could even be that. Sometimes it's even Wi-Fi. You know, in some cases, it's just whether or not it's either Wi-Fi or you have to have it wired in. Most of them are Wi-Fi now, but. Daniel, no, that was not an interruption, buddy. I'm just glad we caught it before we actually ended.
Yeah.
That was like right thing.
Because we're about 20 seconds ahead of you guys in the chat or so, and it's like he hit the end button and then boom, your comment
luckily had not hit the end button
or
yet,
not the end, but the sign off screen.
Yeah, because our little video thing there takes a little bit longer, so like I got lucky. But thank you for that, Daniel, and thank you all again for listening, and we will catch you on the next show.